What's going on, guys? Welcome to another week of oil and gas startups. Taking this one solo today. It's just your guy, Colin, Frack Slap. I know you guys get disappointed when we don't have Jake on the show, but I have a great guest today. I got Ariana Carruth, CEO of PWS. How are you doing today?
Great. It's great to be here.
Good.
Thanks so much for having me.
Ariana told me that she has an extensive background in broadcasting. So I'm about to put her podcasting skills to the test and
goodness.
see how good are you really.
No. Well, I'm a bit rusty, I think. So.
I can already tell that you're more comfortable than most people.
Okay.
Like some people get in here and they're kind of rigid and stiff until we get going. Sometimes I have to bust out the whiskey to loosen.
Well, I was going to say, y'all did offer whiskey.
Yeah. Most people don't want whiskey at 10 o'clock in the morning when they're recording podcasts. So, okay. I love podcasts like this because PWS, I have no idea what y'all do. You know, I looked up on LinkedIn real quick. You know, I saw some things about Oilfield 4.0. I don't even know what that means. So I'm sure we're going to have a great conversation here. But why don't you give me the high level? What is PWS?
So we're an international products company operating in oil and gas. We are focused on what we have trademarked as our CNIT technology, carbon negative impact tooling. And basically, we're in the ESG space with downhole equipment that reduces emissions and optimizes performance.
So downhole tool, it's in the string. You guys have positioned it as ESG, is reducing carbon. That's pretty interesting. I haven't heard anyone pitch a product or tool like that. And you said the acronym was CINT?
CNIT, Carbon Negative Impact Tooling.
Oh, CNIT. Okay, got you.
Basically, it's technology that can be introduced into operations that uses less energy in a task than an alternative. So the idea is that if you're cognizant of what you're putting into your operations, that you can easily reduce CO2 emissions without making it too complicated.
Yeah.
That we can be that easy ESG partner with not just our technology, but helping you identify maybe what technology that you have that could be classified as CNIT technology.
Yeah.
Or in other ways, or in offering emissions reporting or consultancy in sustainability.
Okay.
Because we're all in this space of like knowing that we have to transition with the energy transition in oil and gas. Yeah. And so that's why our company was founded.
Well, this week in particular is very interesting with the war in Russia and Ukraine and the energy crisis. And, you know, this podcast may not go out for a few weeks, but just to, you know, we're recording this on, what is today's date? March 9th. And so there's a lot happening in the world. Yeah. And I've been over on Twitter and LinkedIn saying, you know, there's nothing more ESG than American oil. And people are starting to realize that now, right?
Absolutely.
And you look at the oil and gas that we produce in this country, it is a lot cleaner than other parts of the world. And
most definitely.
we have a lot of smart people and companies that are working to make it even cleaner and more sustainable day after day. So we're going to take this conversation in two parts. We're going to talk about, you know, what you guys are doing, and then macro level of, you know, where the industry is and how oil and gas fits into the transition.
Right.
Because it's something that I'm very passionate about. So first, before I really dive into what y'all are doing, your CEO looked on your LinkedIn about 2 minutes before we started this podcast. Looked like you didn't start off as CEO. You started off at a different position. Did you found the company or did you?
No, I was recruited.
Okay.
I was recruited when I was in the Middle East.
Okay.
I was focused on the commercial aspects of oil and gas and really kind of trying to take some concepts probably that we use in other industries like broadcasting and adopt them more aggressively in oil and gas, because at that point we had seen this downturn. And when we have a downturn, we really have to be aware of what changes we can make. And there are changes that I was interested in making in companies in oil and gas to make us more profitable with capital efficiencies. And so that was really my space, was that modernization.
Yeah.
And so I was the chief revenue officer, and then the downturn happened and I took over as CEO.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I was talking before we started this podcast. Yes, like I have no idea what we're doing on here. I was like, I have no idea what we're doing either. I freestyle all of our podcasts. Well, like what I love is I start asking questions and you just like glaze over. Like I was in the Middle East, and like, oh, you're in the Middle East. Okay, let's dive into that, because it's pretty interesting that, you know, you just kind of talk about that. But let's start, you know, you told me you had 20-year career in broadcasting. Let's start, like, I want to talk about this progression from broadcasting to now being CEO.
To oil and gas.
Of an oil and gas related company. So let's kind of go back to point of inception. How did you get into broadcasting? What did you do on broadcasting?
Okay. So broadcasting, I started from the ground up, really. So I was, I operated a board. We call it a board opter. And I operated the board actually during Rush Limbaugh of all shows. So that probably dates me a bit, but that was what that was.
Childhood memory, sitting in the back seat of the car with my dad, listening to Rush Limbaugh, wanting to like kill myself as a kid.
So yes, so I was one of the people around the country that was operating the board during one of those broadcasts. And I got my feet wet, really on the operations side, and then tried my hat in what it was like to be behind the mic in an entertainment space. And then quickly realized that all the behind the scenes of how the company is run and how we make money and advertising and marketing became my passion. And I spent a lot of time in that space with sales teams, sales enablement, and everything that was acutely tied to the revenue of the company.
Yeah.
My career grew from, I think at one point I was like a promotions director, and then I became a vice president and ran the company. There, obviously, as a female, my trajectory may have been a bit different. I had children, and my career took different pauses throughout my life having kids. And when I decided to re-enter into the workforce, I chose oil and gas. My husband at the time had been, or he is still in oil and gas. And so I was very familiar with oil and gas and very tied to it and very educated in that space for quite a long time. And also it intrigued me. And there was so many amazing aspects of oil and gas that were similar to broadcasting. You know, this fiery attitude of like, we can do anything, and, you know, the innovation, but also it's a fun industry and it gets in your blood the same way broadcasting does. So I re-entered the workforce and actually re-entered in that sales space in oil and gas. And that just grew in from, you know, a sales space, just commercially focused and marketing focused. And that then became that.
Like, I love hearing stories like yours where people have built up successful careers outside of oil and gas, and then some way or another, they find their way into oil and gas and they end up loving it. And it's always it's like it gets in your veins. And
it does.
Like, it's just so contagious. Something about it.
It is contagious. Yeah. Yes, it is absolutely contagious. And then it's also one of those industries that you can just believe in. I mean, there are so many amazing people in oil and gas. It's fun to hang out with people in oil and gas. I mean, I send my son to a school where everyone is oil and gas. I mean, it's a great comfort space. And I was an expat in oil and gas, and you just, it definitely does get in your blood.
Yeah. So what did your husband do in oil and gas?
His focus has been subsea.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. So is that why were you overseas for his job? So in Middle East, where did y'all live at?
Actually, we lived in Norway.
Oh, you lived in Norway?
Yeah,
okay, cool. That's
I was
cool.
in the Middle East professionally with a company that I was employed with.
Oh, got you. Yeah. Got you. Yeah, that's always. So I joined this company in venture in 2014 and was promised the world. It's like going to be traveling all over the world.
We're always promised that.
Making all this money. And then 2014 downturn hit. And I never got, I got a ton of great experience. Still got to go deep water Gulf of Mexico, North Slope of Alaska, everywhere around the US, but never got to go spend time in the Middle East or, you know, just anywhere in the world. And so I'm always jealous when people get to have that experience, but also love like hearing your story of re-entering the workforce after becoming a mother. And you know, I have 3 kids myself and see the hardships that parents go through when dealing with that. Do think it's funny that you're like, okay, I just went through this challenging time of being a mother. Now I'm going to go get an oil and gas, like put some additional stress on you. You know? So, but anyways, that's really interesting. And so let's talk about the technology that you guys are implementing. And, you know, I come from a drilling background, drilled and completed lots of wells in my life. And so I always like talking about downhole technology. Like I said, this is the first time I've heard something positioned as, hey, this is downhole technology that's going to
save energy.
It's going to save energy and reduce carbon emissions. So walk me through that part. What is the technology? Like I'm a 10-year-old that has no drilling background. And then maybe I'll drill down deeper, and no pun intended, into like what it actually is. But I just want to hear how you guys explain it.
Well, I don't have an engineering degree, so this might come across very easy to me.
Look, I have a high school degree too. I just drilled a lot of wells, so I'm not an engineer either.
We have what we've trademarked is Zoom technology for drilling. It's the Zoom DX. And basically, it is lateral wave technology. It is in the vibratory technology space, that bucket, but we are in the string. And basically, the technology is downhole equipment. It is in the string, and it creates a lateral wave with this off-centered mass that we have patented.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, in drilling, there are harmful and destructive harmonics in that string. And when that happens, all sorts of chaos happens in the drilling process. And part of that is like high stick slip, your ROP is suffering. And those are things that you don't want to have. It doesn't make it effective
drilling
to drill,
operation
right?
becomes more inefficient, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we increase that efficiency and save on drilling time by basically going in with this lateral wave that kind of, think of it as like noise canceling headphones. It cancels out the unwanted harmonics. And so then it steadies the state of the string. And when the string then is steady, then you have more effective on bottom time. And so your ROP is increased. And what we have seen then is we're really eliminating stick slip issues to background levels. So obviously our technology is used in, extended reach drilling, horizontal. We are often compared to technology like the agitator. That's an axial vibration tool. So we are different. We are patented, but also our technology is not in the BHA, it's in the string.
Yeah.
It was invented by a colleague of mine, Michael Blakely, and he was a drilling engineer for quite some time. And so I think that what is so great about our industry is that we have these innovators in the industry who were on the job and they're frustrated for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
And they are inventing technology in their headspace of how can we do this better?
Yeah.
And I think that our strategy with this is that there is a lot of focus on the BHA. And the BHA is just actually a small portion. Your string can be like 3 miles long or something crazy, right?
Yeah, you're talking 10 to 20,000 feet of pipe.
There's a lot that is happening in the string. But
Yeah.
our focus is so much on the BHA. And it doesn't have to be about changing your bit. I think that having a good bit on your BHA is important, yes.
Yeah.
But there are other things that are happening that are just as important. And so if you adopt
Yeah.
the zoom into the string and cancel out these unwanted harmonics and have more effective drilling, you are saving time drilling.
Yeah.
Now, how we calculate that out then is, when you're saving all that time, you're also saving on diesel fuel. And if we only take the diesel fuel savings alone, we are saving a considerable amount of energy, CO2, but also cost for the client.
Yeah. Well, first, I think you speak really well to the product for not being an engineer. Like,
not an
you
engineer.
Definitely throw out the technical terms, and I'm like, hey, that all makes sense in a sentence. So, yeah, I think you need to give yourself more credit for being able to speak to the engineering and the value proposition of the product. But no, I think that's actually a really good point of how much focus we put on the BHA and a drill string, but we don't really focus on, hey, we've got 2 miles of pipe behind the BHA. Surely there's things that we can do to increase efficiency there. And then that leads to the point of increasing efficiency in the drilling operation. Like, let's think about this. You have to change out tools, right? And you have to make a bit trip or, you got to change out a motor or MWD tools, whatever it may be. How much energy does it take and how much time loss does it take to make that bit trip and lose time from drilling, right?
Right.
And so if you start looking at, okay, how can we stay in the hole longer? In y'all's case, how can we eliminate these unwanted harmonics? The efficiencies start backing up, to your point. Hey, diesel usage goes down. That's a very easy one to quantify, right? Just there's probably 5 to 10 other things that become more efficient and overall reduce a carbon footprint. And so that's actually really interesting to me.
Well, we're also saving then too, because these harmonics can be so destructive in operations, they're damaging other tools.
Yeah.
So there are cost implications.
Yeah.
But then also, I mean, if you're really going to scope it out, then there are sustainability, impacts as well, because when you are then replacing a tool, then what happens to that tool? What's happening in the recycling of that tool? I mean, we're basically extending the life of everything downhole, or the most part, a lot of different things downhole when they're not being destroyed.
Well, that's what I had a really popular Twitter thread. I think it was last year, and part of that thread was, I think some of the most interesting energy tech over the next 10 years is actually in the oil and gas space, because not only does it affect sustainability and make the industry cleaner, but a lot of it also has positive economic impact for the operators too. And so if you can hit this intersection of, hey, this will save you money, but also makes you more sustainable and gets you points on your ESG score, it's a fucking no-brainer for companies, right?
Totally.
So, yeah, that's but that's kind of what I was alluding to, is that you have these negative harmonics, which are going to have wear and tear on tools in your BHA. So now you're having to pull. And overall, it can save a company time and money and reduce carbon emissions as well. So I love technology that kind of hits at that intersection. It's really exciting.
And it's simple. Okay. So I think that the best innovations that our industry is going to see moving forward is also let's not overcomplicate things. Things can be simple, and our tool is patented. I mean, obviously I'm going to only say good things about it, but what I also love about it is that it's simple. This isn't something that, it doesn't have, a complicated internal system that could break, but also the servicing on it is really easy. It doesn't have to be serviced, but every 5 to 6 runs. So I think that it's taking innovation in our industry and then going, okay, how can we make it more simple, more user-friendly, and also something that is so robust, we don't really have to think about changing it out. And that's why also I love oil and gas so much in the technology. We're not creating fragile technology, it's
the stuff that's getting pounded downhole, miles below the Earth's surface.
Absolutely.
So hearing you talk, it sounds like it's, I haven't seen tools. I don't know what it looks like, but it sounds like
it's a big pipe, like everything
else.
else.
Sounds like it's done. It sounds like
it's a big pipe.
Have a pretty good idea of what it would look like, but sounds like it may be dummy iron. Like it doesn't have a lot of internal mechanics to it. So it sounds like it's simple.
It's got subs on either side. I mean, it's a long pipe. The magic is in the internal component that is patented.
Yeah, got you.
Yeah.
I also like the point that you brought up of engineers in this industry that continuously see problems in their day-to-day operations, and they're smart people, right? So they look at, okay, how can I fix that problem? And that's one of the coolest things about oil and gas to me, is that you have people that have the capability to figure out those problems. And we've only been drilling horizontal wells for, really commercially for a decade. And so we're still in the infancy of horizontal drilling. And then you see what's happening in geothermal, they're taking applications and knowledge from oil and gas and what we've been able to do with horizontal drilling. And so I think that's super cool that, one, there's simple technology. Like I don't want to call it low hanging fruit, because it is difficult problem. They're difficult problems to solve, but they're problems that can be solved by engineers that see them day to day and say, hey, I've got an idea for this, and then go commercialize it and make it a product. So how long has PWS been doing this? How long have y'all been?
So we started, and obviously the best time ever to start in oil and gas, which was 2020.
Which in my opinion is the best time to start. Like I believe the best businesses are built at the bottom of cycles, in the dark days. Because
in the darkest of days,
all you can do is go up.
$37 a barrel. We said, hey, let's keep going. So we are a relatively new company. There are advantages and disadvantages of when we started in that space. I think that obviously the company was born out of that, that we are in an energy transition. When you say 4.0, that actually was something that we really attached to when ADNOC made their declaration that they would be part of, the industrial revolution of 4.0 with their their targets for net zero at 2030. And we started seeing all these changes, and we knew that it was coming. We wanted to build a company that was really focused on that. So the advantage is that I didn't have to take some company in a new transition and start talking about ESG when we had never talked about ESG. Our company was built on those foundations. Obviously, then also coming in at a time where we were all experiencing this global pandemic and a market recession, that some of the capital efficiency ideas that I really wanted to put forth for how the company would be led were much more digestible in 2020 than they would have been in 2019 or 2018. I mean, telling, a sales professional that they could Zoom a call in 2018 looks totally different than it does now in 2022, right?
For sure.
Telling them I don't want printed brochures, because it's,
it's archaic.
It's archaic, yes. In 2018 was, an uphill battle. Saying it now, they're like, of course we wouldn't want printed brochures.
Yeah, why would we do that?
Exactly.
Yeah. It is wild how things that should have been common sense to our industry back in 2018, 2019.
Yes.
Like everyone's kind of, COVID was a good thing in that sense.
Yes, in that sense, absolutely.
Yeah.
Things that I was talking about ad nauseum in 2019 that was just falling on deaf ears. Suddenly 2020, certainly by, H2 of 2020, people were like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah. So I'm really proud of our industry that we have not just moved forward with the energy transition, but we are becoming more efficient. We are having tough conversations about capital efficiencies and inventory and trying to do things differently. I run a company that I refuse call-offs. We don't do call-offs. And I think that we can be commercially viable without doing call-offs. We work to long-term contracts and we manufacture our goods for contracts instead of having a lot on the shelf.
Yeah.
When I don't know what's going to happen to the market. I don't know when those going to be used, but also just for the advantage to our clients. They know that their stuff is manufactured to their spec, and also they get the latest iteration.
Yeah.
It's not a year old even. It's the latest.
Yeah.
And then it's theirs for their contract, and then the tools are, recycled after they're used.
So let's talk about that. Like let's dive into that, because I'm always interested to hear from operators that have capital intensive businesses such as downhole equipment. It looks completely different than a business like Digital Wildcatters or software.
Right.
And I'm an operator. I like all businesses. And so I like kind of digging into your mind of running this business. And that's really interesting to me. You're like, hey, look, we keep light inventory. We don't keep these things on the shelves. We manufacture off of a contract basis, which I'm sure that comes with pros and cons as well, too, because I'm sure y'all turn down some jobs that maybe are a one-off, and
we do.
I'm sure you think about that. You're like, oh, that sucks. That's lost revenue. But you got to think about the business model and long-term sustainability of the company as well, right? And if you had those one call-offs, I mean, that's capital intensive to keep all that inventory on hand.
It is.
So
it's also a risk to the IP.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you're a small company and a startup, your IP is everything.
Yeah.
So,
So did you guys start this company with funding? Has it been bootstrapped? Talk me through that a little bit. You don't have to, because I do sense like a little bit of resourcefulness in the way that y'all think about the business.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that comes from my broadcasting days. Broadcasting is not an industry, oil and gas. I was amazed with oil and gas and how, gluttonous oil and gas can be. I mean, I certainly remember the heydays of oil and gas and the amazing parties and, just the swag and just the expense accounts and everything.
It was so amazing.
It's so glorious. Okay. In broadcasting, that's not a thing. Okay. In broadcasting, it is like, you have to be very resourceful. So a lot of that was just like who I am as an individual and how I've managed a company.
Yeah.
So a lot of that is just like, why would we do it that way? Just because we have the money, like, why would we spend it like that? Like, it's just so foreign to me. I'm like, can't we do it better?
That's what I feel like.
Can't we do it more
I feel like that's
efficiently?
like something that gets ingrained in your DNA because at Wildcatters, I mean, we're scrappy as fuck. Look at our office. Like
it's an amazing office. It's really cool, actually.
Like, we're scrappy. Like, I mean, have that. I mean, it is literally one of our core values that we do more with less. And I take pride in that. And one thing is like, dude, I grew up as a roughneck. Like I never got exposed to that in oil and gas of the extravagant parties. Okay, like I was a roughneck, and guess what? I mean, we did some pretty innovative shit out there to fix parts on our drilling rig because we had to. We had to figure it out. And so I've like just had that beaten into my mind of you figure out solutions. You don't focus on a problem. It doesn't matter if you have resources. You figure it out. Yeah, and that's something that is so core to my DNA that any company I ever run, like it actually becomes a problem because it's like you start growing and it's like, oh, hey, maybe we should spend some money to fuel our growth instead of like just staying scrappy. But yeah, I think that the dynamics of running a downhole tool company that's capital intensive, I'm always just fascinated by that because I've had companies on the show that are doing it successfully. And I think that it's hard, right?
It's hard.
It's hard, but it's not impossible. And I see a ton of companies succeeding with it. And so love how y'all kind of frame that.
Yeah, you just have to be intentional. And I do think that the best things come out of being creative and being cognizant of your expenditures in the way of like, you can't just throw money at any problem or every problem. And that like the more creative solutions, but also the better solutions. I phrase it more of like sustainable business models, right? Because, you know, I think we've all worked for the companies that have had hundreds of millions of dollars infused to them. And we've all seen the executives spend all of that money and then, you know, essentially those companies are sold off, right?
Yeah.
We've all seen that.
Yeah.
And I think that we're all aware of that. And I think when you get this big piggy bank, you can be in that space of like, let's just spend to spend. But you do have to be very cognizant because you're not just, you know, talking about when oil's over $100 a barrel, but you have to prepare for these big market contractions. And you know, I joked my daughter is going to college and she was thinking about writing essays of like what she's going to do. And we had joked about the oil industry. I was like, honestly, your whole life, your whole childhood, you could write a great essay just based off of where you were when oil was what, you know, because it's like you were born in 2004. So let's see where oil was then. But here's a child who has grown up in oil and gas and seen her parents and her life react to oil and gas.
Yeah.
And I think that when I transfer that over, like, how do I want to lead a company? I'm not sure I want this like massive switch of, you know, getting really big because oil's up and then retracting it and getting, you know, I mean, it's just this unhealthy cycle instead of just riding that steady wave where we are being careful and we're being cognizant of our capital efficiencies.
It's always driven me crazy with E&Ps specifically of massive growth during times of high commodity prices. And then when the market contracts, they lay off 30% of their workforce. CEOs never come out and say, hey, this was a result of our poor planning.
Right.
Because this is one of the most, I mean, what industry runs in cycles more than oil and gas, right? Like you should plan for that and say, hey, we know that there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be regression to the mean. Right. We need to plan for that and have sustainable growth that way. And there are great companies like that, like, you know, Hillcorps of the world that don't lay off people, but they plan for those ups and downs. And I think that you have to think about that when you're a business that operates in oil and gas, that, hey, there's going to be good times. There's going to be bad times. We have to grow sustainably. To your point, I think you take on too much capital. That can be a curse to a lot of companies. Yeah. You see it in Silicon Valley all the time. They chase crazy high valuations. They don't ship product. They're never able to truly grow into those valuations. They just burn through a shit ton of money because they have it.
Yeah, or they make a bunch of products that nobody wants to buy.
Nobody wants in the first place. Yeah,
but they spent millions of dollars in prototype. Yeah. I mean, like I talk to other companies and I'm like, I can't believe you spent that much money on that stuff.
The
like
grift,
make sure somebody wants it.
The grift in deep tech and energy tech right now is high. Yeah. You have companies raising millions and millions of dollars. They can't get a usable product that anyone wants or that's even commercially viable.
Yeah.
And this is a conversation for another time. But I mean, it happens. I mean, shipping product that works is hard when you're talking about energy tech. And it's always a fine balance if you need the right amount of capital. And I think too much capital is a curse, but then you don't want to be underfunded. And so that's always a balancing act. So next question is, you know, in oil and gas, one of the problems with downhole tech is that everyone wants to see pilots, and they're like, they never want to be the first, right? They're interested in adopting tech, but they don't want to be the first one to send your tool downhole.
That's true.
Have y'all gotten over that hump?
Yeah,
to where y'all are running in wells?
Definitely. And to be honest, I think a lot of that is, you have to explain the technology over and over and over again. You have to make sure that, you know.
To the point you get tired of hearing yourself talk about it.
To the point where you have to make sure you're not, you know, telling too much, you know, because it is your IP, but that you're, you know, convincing people. And I think also it's that risk matrix, you know, making sure that people understand that if they take that risk on you, that you're not going to embarrass them, that, you know, the Zoom in particular, you know, if it were to fail, it just stops running, right? Because it's based off flow. So it just stops turning, it stops vibrating. It's not going to like blow up downhole. So it's talking really about what the technology is, what the risk is. And then also, I think a lot of it is leveraged off of individuals, you know, their reputations. And oil and gas, one of the best things about oil and gas is the networks that we all have and how we do kind of look out for each other. So, but yeah, certainly adoption is a challenge with any new technology downhole. Absolutely.
I mean, getting distribution of any product is always a challenge, right? It doesn't matter if it's downhole tech, if it's software, whatever it may be. Distribution's always a challenge. First, create a good product. Doesn't matter if you create a good product, though, if you have no distribution, though, right? And adoption. So
Yes.
But where do you guys, are y'all operating mainly in the Permian?
We actually are not in the Permian at all.
Actually not in the Permian. No. That's interesting. Okay.
So the company never had a focus on the U.S. or has not yet.
Okay.
Obviously, 2020 was not the time of the time of the industry to focus on the U.S. I do think that the U.S. market is certainly viable for the company moving forward. We're in drilling, fishing, and coil intervention, and I think, you know, the coil applications in particular are something that definitely interests me moving forward in that market space. The Permian is a very specific market. And I think that some of our commercial strategies work better in different parts of the world. So for us, our focus has been on the Middle East and Asia.
Okay, cool.
Long-term contracts, you know, bigger operators, less, instead of, you know, thinking about a lot of customers, few customers.
Less volume on the customer side.
So to be really honest, and also to be really honest, again, I operate the company in a specific way. So if I was to open up a U.S. market, I would be looking for a U.S. partner. And I would be looking at licensing deals, or I would be looking at, you know, a revenue share opportunity in the U.S. with a company that had the infrastructure that we don't have.
So you'd be looking for like an NOV partner or someone
not
like
an NOV, since they're a competitor.
All right, not an NOV. Sorry,
but,
you guys aren't getting it.
But yeah, I would be looking for a strong partner that shared similar values, that then had that infrastructure, because you do need a lot of sales professionals and a lot of that input. It is very much of who you know. I love the Permian. I love hanging out in the Permian. I actually really do like Odessa and Midland. But yeah, that's what I would be looking at.
The Permian in particular is really interesting, because I remember like back in 2017, 2018, the CFO of a pressure pumping company, they actually shut down their operations in Midland. And they're like, we just can't compete out there because all of these small mom and pops, they go to church with their clients. And like, you have to have boots on the ground, people there that are in the Midland network, right? And so, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. You know, there's so many paths to growth, and one of the best paths is through partnerships, right? That allows you to start scaling up without having to increase OpEx of bringing on, you know, sales teams, and then just the systems and processes that you need to stand up to make that, it's a huge challenge. So
it works well for us.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to say I don't know everything. So I think that sticking to your core competencies is the best.
Yeah.
We have great tech, it's patented, and we know a lot about ESG and the energy transition. And we can certainly put the math to CO2 savings.
Yeah.
But I don't have a lot of, on the boots, on the ground boots, these connections around the world. But, we do have partners in Saudi. We do have partners in the UAE. They are well equipped. Our partner in the UAE has 45 years of experience. They have the facilities. They have the teams. They have, they're in ADNOC's office. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, for sure.
If I was trying to facilitate that from over here.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I think that's the sign of any great leader is to understand where your strengths and weaknesses are. So definitely
a lot of weaknesses.
Yeah, definitely no shame in admitting where y'all are weak and where you're strong. I think that's a lot of companies struggle with that. So I think that's great. Okay. Someone's listening to this. We have a lot of drilling engineers, completions engineers that listen to the show.
Yeah.
If they want to hear about this technology, what's y'all's website? Can they find out about y'all online? Can they find you on LinkedIn?
Everywhere. Everywhere. Even on Instagram, I think.
Damn, even on IG.
You can DM. You can DM the company on Instagram. I'm sure someone will find a way to check it.
This is the 2022 oil field. We're no longer in 2018.
No,
so that's why everyone's like, I go to events, like you have cards. I'm like, dog, I'm on Twitter. Like you can DM me on Twitter.
Exactly. They can find us on PureWorldSustainability.com or it's PWS-CE.com.
I meant to ask, what does that stand for? So
PWS, PureWorld Sustainability.
There you go. Okay.
We take sustainability quite seriously. It is in our name.
Cool.
But yeah, we are on LinkedIn most certainly, and Facebook and Instagram.
All right, guys. If y'all want to reach out and hear about this, I think it's pretty cool. We're gonna drop a link in the show notes. Y'all can check out PWS online, get some more information. I mean, this conversation's been great. I'm excited about the technology because I love stuff that's downhole, that's simple, that lives at the intersection of creating efficiencies, improving economics, and sustainability. So if you guys want to check it out, make sure to reach out. Appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Also, she did have a background in broadcasting. Tested it here. Got an A+ review. So
thanks.
Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much.